Welcome back, team, to Scaling Skinny, the weight loss revolution. And so, one of the questions we get all the time is, why does the weight loss revolution matter, especially if you maybe are not that interested in developing a weight loss program in your office? I think there's so many reasons why it's important. One, there's not a medication that's going to affect healthcare in America in my lifetime more than the GLP drugs have already and will continue the next 10, 15 years. There's going to be a ripple effect, that we've never seen before. Obesity was such a pandemic, such an issue in America. And, by 2030, there was actually slated to be 80% of America was going to be obese or overweight, which, those numbers are just off the charts. But I think more than that, it's really creating this unique population. So let's get into it, because I really want you to understand what the weight loss revolution means for your practice, because I think understanding that concept and why it matters, I think is really going to help put the rest of the program in reference and a good framework for you, but also help you make some real decisions of where your practice is going over the next, 5, 10 years, because I think there is going to be some, systematic changes and algorithms you're going to have to build into your practice to really be able to thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been personal to both of us. So many of my loved ones, we've seen it affect our practice so much. So we're excited to share more of that with you.
Here's just some things I want you to think about when you're talking about the weight loss revolution and why it matters, is a couple things. One, it's really creating this unique patient base in terms of things. I used to think that when we talked about the, weight loss that patients were going to have, as a plastic surgeon, this was just going to be our massive weight loss patients that lost 150 pounds, had multiple comorbidities. There was no real great options for them other than these large surgeries that took place over several years because it's such a systematic approach. And I'll tell you, that's what I thought during the first probably 5-6 months of the weight loss revolution. It's really changed. And I honestly was completely wrong. So I think the idea that there's this unique population, there's a unique need that we've never seen in numbers that we've never seen before, I think is super interesting for all of our aesthetic partners out there.
Yeah, and not only do we get the opportunity to treat these unique needs, but also prevent them, right? So if you do have all these patients on the weight loss meds, on the wellness program, you have this huge opportunity. So we'll really dive into how you speak to them, how you treat these new problems, but also how you help prevent them, because that's also a great opportunity for you, for them and for you.
And this is where I truly, truly believe that there's going to be a second cosmetic wave coming for those practices that really can speak and thrive with these patients and their unique needs. Those practices that don't really speak to those patients, don't have a plan to be able to help them with the specific issues they're going to have, I think are going to struggle, because it's going to be such an issue. I think in 2024, skin laxity, the side effects from the Ozempic face and body are going to be the biggest trends of the year by far, not even close. And so I think really being able to speak to those patients and really having a great algorithm in your office of how you're going to treat this is going to be key to your success going forward.
And they're going to see someone to treat it, right? Like
100%.
they feel great. So why not let them come see you? They're already seeing you, right? So keep these things in your practice. What a great opportunity.
Or you're going to have patients that are going somewhere else, but they want to go somewhere that really kind of understands their specific needs. I think in this day and age, the idea that, patients are just going to go to the corner aesthetic practice, plastic surgery, dermatology, med spa, it's faded by the wayside. People want to go to somebody that really understands their unique and specific needs. So I think creating that specialty of being able to treat patients who have undergone their weight loss revolution, I think is going to be absolutely key. I'll tell you, this is just one of the things that has been priceless to me. So, really kind of started this weight loss revolution was this New England Journal of Medicine article that talked about TerraZiptide and the actual weight loss that people were able to achieve at a year. So, this is really where the pivot, no question for me, because, like many of you, I don't want to offer something in our practice that we don't truly, truly believe that works. And we'll get into conviction later in the show, but I think something that's absolutely priceless to this. But this was a huge article. So if you need some and you're listening to this on our podcast, New England Journal of Medicine, July 21st, 2022, TerraZiptide once weekly for the treatment of obesity was definitely life-changing for me, exponential for our practice.
Yeah, it's staggering numbers. When you first brought it up, I couldn't believe it. So definitely check it out.
So why does it matter? TerraZiptide, is on pace to be the #1 most sold drug in America ever. If you think about that number, more than any other medication in America, this will be the #1 sold drug. And that's only one of the medications out there for weight loss. Just shows how many people this resonates with. And so even if patients aren't getting these medications in your office, they're getting them somewhere. And then not every office, especially when patients get this to the endocrinologist, the primary care, somewhere else, they're still going to have a need to treat the Ozempic body, Ozempic face, Ozempic butt, Ozempic legs, which is going to be a thing. We'll talk about that later in the program. You really, really have to be able to speak to these patients because there's going to be staggering numbers out there.
Yeah, like you said, even if you don't know that they're on the medications, make this part of your intake form, especially for your surgery patients, because maybe they didn't get the prescription from you. They might not think it's important to bring up, but as we all know, it affects things like surgery, right? So just make it kind of part of your process at the office.
And just to put in perspective for everyone who's listening or watching this, I think a couple things, if you look at bariatric surgery, right, there was 200,000 bariatric surgeries previously in a year. If you look at only Wegovy, because at that time, which is not true anymore, it was the only FDA approved medication for chronic weight management. And there was 2 million prescriptions. That didn't include Monjera, that didn't include Ozempic, that didn't include any of the compound pharmacy medications. So those numbers are off the charts, staggering. Just shows how many patients are out there, living their weight loss revolution, living their fit and fabulous life, and they're looking for someone to help them, look as great as they feel now.
Yeah, exactly. It essentially equals opportunity, right, for people like you and us. So we want to teach you how to take advantage of that.
When you look at the publications, the press, you can't be on TV and not see some of this. It was funny. I was driving home, driving to work the other day, and my brother called me that Charles Barkley was talking about how, TerraZiptide was the greatest thing that he had ever done for himself. And so, Oprah Winfrey recently came public that after denying it for so long, that she took these medications. So it has just become such an overall part of our daily life. And this is why, again, even if you're not going to offer these medications in your office, I think you definitely need to be educated about them. I think your office needs to be able to talk about them, needs to be able to talk about, the sequela effect of these medications in terms of skin laxity, volume loss, body changes in an aesthetic practice, because it's out there. Patients are getting information. Why not get the information from the experts, the aesthetic providers such as yourself? And if you're not going to take this opportunity to be a leader in this, someone else is going to, and they may not be as educated on these treatments as you are. So at some level, doing a disservice to your patients if you're not speaking to them about this.
Yeah, and we'll actually dive more into how to speak to these patients later in the training in our sales and lead conversion video. So make sure that you don't miss that.
I touched on this earlier. There's such a unique patient population. The idea from the past that, when you looked at massive weight loss patients, they were a little bit older, they were in the 150, weight loss thing. Most of them had diabetes, hypertension, multiple comorbidities. And that was because they needed to meet a certain criteria to undergo those surgeries. Now with the FDA approval of some of these medications, such as Zepbound and Wegovy, now with the compound pharmacies, now with the aesthetic practices being able to help guide patients through this, you're seeing this unique population. I'll tell you, in our practice, the vast majority of our patients are much younger. They don't have multiple of those comorbidities, and they're in that more of kind of 10 to 30 pound weight loss, which is super, super exciting because you have younger patients, good skin, that mild to moderate weight loss. Now that not all these patients are circumferential lifts or these huge surgical patients, actually you have a lot of patients that are, in that great spot where some of these minimally and non-invasive treatments are extremely, extremely effective. And we'll get into it because I do think there's going to be some pivot changes of combination treatments. Also, I think with the different population, you've got to be a little bit more mindful of time off work, downtime for patients, and even cost. I think with some of our younger patients, maybe a little bit more of an issue. So, and how do you guide and navigate through some of these unique challenges for these patient population?
Yeah, I was going to say almost exactly that. As a med spa provider myself, it really has provided so much opportunity. Like you said, if they've lost in that 10 to 30 pound range, we typically can make some really nice changes with combination treatments. We still have awesome surgical opportunity, right? But we're really seeing both. It's not just one or the other.
With this unique need to, I think it's important to think about a couple things in your office when you're treating patients, even if you don't offer these. And I know I keep saying that because I just want you to understand the overall, impact that these medications are going to have on the healthcare industry and on the aesthetic practice. So making sure in your own practice, you've done a couple things. We've added it to all of our intake sheets because I think it is important. Most of us had a structure in terms of weight loss stuff, but if you don't know that this is a moving target, sometimes can be self-sabotage, because if you do some type of structural support, fillers, fat transfer, other things, and then patients are losing weight, they're getting these medications elsewhere and you're not knowing about it, it can be like, oh, I don't see any difference, but you're not part of that overall process. So I think knowing what they're on, I think having some very, very good guidelines in your office about when you treat people. I think it is okay to treat people. And we actually in our practice encourage people to get started on structural support, skin tightening, those type of things as soon as they start the medications, but setting the expectation that if you start these when you're starting your weight loss journey, the goal is to hold the line and not necessarily make you tired. Because if you're actively losing weight, you're just trying to look absolutely fabulous, it's going to be hard to make that skin tighter when they're losing weight. So I think those are important conversations to have with your patients. I think if you're in the surgery side, making sure you have a good algorithm, and you can download these from scaleandskinny.com in terms of our practice stuff, in terms of how we actually manage these. If their patients have lost 30 pounds or less, we make them wait about 3 months. If they're over 60 pounds, then we make them wait 6 months before surgery. We've also followed some of the new anesthesia guidelines in terms of making sure that patients have stopped the medications at least 2 weeks before their surgery. And then some other parts are when do you get them back on these medications? And we'll definitely dive more into this, but understanding that you have an algorithm. For us, it's at least 2 weeks, and that's for some smaller procedures. Bigger procedures in terms of mommy makeover, other things like that, we're typically close to about 6 weeks. Also making sure those patients are getting a good protein and dietary intake. So these are all the reasons some of these things matter with this unique population, and really making sure that in your practice, you have a great algorithm of how to deal with all of these issues.
And I'll just say this one more time, expectations are so important. So just being super open with your patients about what to expect, why we're doing these treatments, when we're going to do them, and why, for example, we make you wait however amount of time, or why we're recommending these prevention treatments. That's with anything we do, right? But, we have to say things so many times before they actually hear it. So you really got to repeat it, write it down for them, put it on everything, put it on your social media. And, we'll get into more of that later. But
And this is why I think, really being able to speak to them, understand that the journey. I tell patients all the time, if I could change anything from my own process, I would have started, my skin tightening, my biostimulants right at the beginning of my weight loss journey, just to make stuff a little bit easier, because I want my fit and fabulous appearance to match how I feel. And so, why wait to that and then try and backtrack because you feel so great and now you're like, oh, I got this or that you're trying to work on. We all know preventative is much easier than being reactive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of the questions that I've gotten is whether the skinny shot, this weight loss revolution, is the end of the aesthetic era. And to me, there's not a statement that could be more wrong than this. It's never been the goal of liposuction, of non-invasive treatments, to get patients, to be to a spot where, you're changing their weight. They've always been body contouring, body shaping, sculpting procedures, where this is the fine tuning. This is where, the icing on the cake in terms of this. Also, on the flip side, the goal of these weight loss medications, even though people refer them and we call them the skinny shot, it's not to make people super skinny. It's make them at an ideal weight and make them live their healthy life, get them to a fit and fabulous point. So it's not to get every little ounce of fat off them. So you get them to their ideal weight, that you worked with them. And then this is where, aesthetic procedures become fun again, right? Because now you have all sorts of options. You have all sorts of cool things you can do. They feel absolutely fabulous, and you can help them just do that finishing touches. This is where a little bit of product, a little bit of skin tightening goes a long ways for these patients.
Yeah, and they have this newfound confidence, right, that they didn't have before. And I know we can both speak to that personally. We both have lost significant weight on these medications. So once they start losing the weight and they're feeling good about themselves, they literally have this confidence that they haven't had in a really long time. So now they actually are interested in trying these new procedures. They have the motivation. So it is a very unique opportunity that I think, like you said, the complete opposite of the end of aesthetics, that couldn't be farther from the truth.
When you're thinking about these patients, and this is something we'll get into a little bit more in detail in a separate episode, but at least keeping this in mind, I do think when you're talking about the weight loss revolution, you really have to have a mindset about how you're treating these patients, how they're going to fit into your overall practice. The mindset that it's just a separate something, is going to not be as fruitful for you or the patients. I think you really need to integrate this. I think if you're really going to be successful in your practice and the patients are going to get to their absolute, best self, I think this needs to be integrated. I think it needs to be a very thoughtful process in your office. I think you need to really think about your algorithms, like where are we going to start? What's going to be a goal weight? Who's going to see these people? How are we going to help them with the sequela, the Ozempic face, the Ozempic body throughout this? So, definitely going to get more into kind of what we've changed in our practice, but definitely want people to at least think about in your practice, if you are, either seeing these patients or doing this, that it's integrated, and really, if you're going to do this, that you have a mindset that this is going to be, a substantial part of your practice, and you're really going to make a committed effort to it.
I love that point of not having it be like its own separate entity, because even though we do have some exclusive wellness providers, we have our surgeons see these patients, our med spa providers see these patients. And I think that has been so important to help them not like, oh, you're just here for weight loss, go to the weight loss clinic, you know what I mean? Because we really do want it to be something that we can help them with every step of the journey. And then, of course, that's what's helped all of the other areas of our practice grow. So I think that's a really great point.
There's so many more things coming in. I think this is just interesting and integral to part of this. Kind of the last part of why this matters is, you've created, or there is a already patient base out there,
right.
And we're going to really dive into this in the marketing standpoint, but I want you to at least start thinking about this as you're going through our program, is that, there's this unique patient base. You really need to think about how you're going to integrate, how you're going to speak to them. And so,
right.
At Austin Plastic Surgeon, we've developed this session called, the Skinny Shot Squad. And there we've been able to make programs, treatments, and exclusive special offers to that patient population that fits the unique needs that they have individually. And that is key, because now you have this patient base that knows that you've put a lot of thought and effort to be able to treat the specific issues that they have.
Yeah. And like you said, we're speaking to them directly. So if they just lost a bunch of weight, we're really careful how we talk to them. We don't typically say we want to refill your face. We both know we don't want that, right? So you want to literally use specific vocabulary, right? We're talking about structural support, structural synergy. We have all these fun terms that Dr. Franco has helped coin. And then building these really specific marketing campaigns where they're going to get exclusive discounts just for our Skinny Shot Squad, and not just the patients on the medication currently, but even past patients. Because of course, they have things like we said, like of course, skin laxity that they're going to want to treat, and they may just not be ready yet. So we'll help you build those out into actual drip campaigns. The hope is that you can actually automate this marketing. So it really is going to be this like train that's always moving, right? So a steady driver of patients, not only for wellness, but also med spa.
And I think there's so many frontiers that people haven't thought about. So, men is going to absolutely explode because weight loss is something that resonates with them. I think, some of these non-invasive neck stuffs, when we talk about some of the energy devices, some of the stuff like the My Elevate, some of the neck lift stuff that for younger patients that may not be your deep plane facelift type patient stuff. I also think the lower extremity is something that we're going to have to talk about. We're going to get into it, something that we absolutely love, but some mild to moderate skin laxity in the legs. You hate to work this hard and then have some wrinkly leg stuff. We're going to work on that. We're going to treat that, something that can speak to this. Again, it's a pinpoint for patients, and if you're able to speak to it, that's going to be something that's going to move them to a great spot for you. So many options out there. Super excited to share all this with you guys. So we'll see you soon.